Okay, hello everybody. We're going to get started now. Welcome to our webinar, Migrating to DITA, Defining Your Conversion Requirements. As I say in the airplane, if this is not your flight, so you're in the wrong flight, we're going to be continuing our series on DITA Quick Start, which we've been having the past few months. Happy to have you joining us today. I have with me Yehudit Lindblom. Yehudit Lindblom is one of our project managers, and I would like to call her one of our cat herders. Works with a lot of projects here in Suite Solutions. My name is Gelb. I'm the founder and president of the firm. At Suite Solutions, our vision is to help you engage your customers by providing quick access to relevant information. So that's kind of a mouthful, and doesn't, on the surface, seem to be too relevant to conversion. But when you think about a lot of what we're doing, when we're moving to DITA, we're moving to structured content, is we're trying to provide a better experience for our customers, for our readers, whoever is trying to access our content, whether it be internal people, external people. And DITA is really the platform, it's the foundation, but at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is help build a better experience for our customers, and it's important for us to keep that in mind, whether we're getting our tools together, or the conversion, or the specs, and all the nitty-gritty that we're going to be speaking about. So really, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is building a better experience by having better access to good information. At Suite Solutions, we help companies with their XML-based authoring and publishing solutions. We have a platform for dynamic content called SuiteShare, social knowledge base. As in addition, we have a consultancy, system integration, application development, and a large breadth of expertise across many different industries.
So we're going to be talking about tonight a few things. First of all, we're going to go over some of the goals of what we want to talk about today. We're going to talk about some of the key components of a DITA solution. We're going to answer the question, why do a conversion? And we're going to go over the process and help you define what your requirements would be. So the goals of this webinar, the very first goal, the most important one, is to empower you with information and not overwhelm you with too much. We want to help you understand the process, the details, the dependencies, and understand what possibilities you have in terms of conversion. We're going to help you build a solid plan based on our own experience and help you figure out how to do scheduling for it. And we want to make sure that you understand there are certain things that are easily done by certain kinds of people, and other things you need to ask for a little bit of help for, and help you figure out exactly what you can expect from the process. So in this case, the key components of a DITA solution, those of you who have been with us for some of the previous webinars, you've seen these before. You know that we're talking about the staff, the people who are involved, the content, exactly what kind of content you need to work with DITA, translation, if that's applicable, publishing, and how to manage and configure the content. So in this particular webinar, we're going to be discussing the content aspect.
So the first question really is, why should you be doing a professional automated conversion? Meaning, why don't you take your content and convert it by hand? And a lot of folks choose to do that, and a lot of folks think about doing that and maybe try and get a certain way before they decide to go ahead and seek some assistance with an automated conversion, either in-house or seeking a vendor or professional service company. So some of the reasons are as follows. First of all, an automated conversion allows you to quickly attain a large sampling of content to configure and test your tool set. We've spoken about in the past webinars that when we're talking about setting up your tools, your CMS or your style sheets, authoring tools, training, etc. So it's really good to have I would say essential, to have a good sampling of good content, valid content, to be running through your tool set for testing. By doing conversion slowly by hand, it takes a lot longer, and it's much harder to get a good sampling or a good test set to really test out and build up your tools and get everything into a working production level. The second reason is that it allows you to reap the benefits of your DITA investment quickly and hit your target return on investment. Meaning a lot of you guys in the audience are either in the middle of or are starting or thinking about a DITA implementation, they're not cheap, and someone there in your company is sponsoring you, and the people who are looking at the project often want to see some results. And so we might say that that's a little bit, maybe it shouldn't be such a big concern, but it really is a concern that you want to show that, we have a tool set, we're investing in expertise and training, etc., and getting at least some of the content converted and working enables you to go to your corporate sponsors and show that that the system is working. It also allows you to provide your authors with a solid foundation and a benchmark from which to create the new content, and based on familiar pre-existing content. The whole move to DITA for a lot of companies, a lot of groups, is disruptive. Not everyone in the group has experience. In fact, most groups that we work with, most of the writers have little experience, if any, working with XML. And very often, to ease that transition, it's good to have a good solid set of content that is already familiar and you can start working with. You also have to remember that your authors and your team is going to be creating new content. And it's very a good idea to have a good foundation of content that you know is valid, that was looked over and converted by experts through your information architecture team in-house or your consultant, and really went through a good analysis of looking at your old content, your current content, how that maps to DITA content. We'll be talking about that a lot today, and really starting out with a good base from which to move on. Converting content manually is not easy. It's grueling and time-consuming. Authors, they don't really enjoy doing it so well, and it adds to the possibility of burnout even before you even get started, especially if you have a lot of content. Production schedules aren't easy. Again, like I mentioned before, moving to DITA is not, or any kind of new system is disruptive, and taking on the task of converting content by hand adds even more pressure to that schedule. And generally, it doesn't take. It's not so quick. It generally takes a little bit longer than you might expect. Authors are inexperienced with DITA, like we mentioned before, and that lack of expertise will tend to create large amounts of content. Runs the risk of creating a large amount of content with inconsistency right from the beginning. So the idea that where everyone's starting out, and it's a good idea to have a good starting base, and not building your base on the level where folks are starting out from.
Quote, having done this from the other side, it was very helpful for us to see our content, which we were familiar with, already set up in DITA format and publishing. Yeah, that was actually something I said in this whole process when I was back doing my first conversion as a technical writer and going through the whole process of learning DITA. Before I go on, I want to follow up a little bit on what Joe said, because it can sound a little scary if it's not something you're familiar with. I want to tell you, I promise you, from the aspect of being a technical writer, that DITA is amazing, and the amount of work that you put into it in the beginning is to help you all the way throughout all of your publishing needs in the future. So back on the specific topic of the conversion, so we talked about it a little bit burns out the authors, because when you're copying and pasting content into DITA elements, it can be really mind-numbing. And what happens when it's mind-numbing? It ends up taking so much longer than it really should. And of course, when you've got scheduling needs, you don't need something that's going to take longer. The politics reason, because when you've got, as Joe mentioned, you've got the big bosses are coming down and saying, hey, wait a minute, we just spent how much money on this system and you can't even show me what a PDF looks like. So we want to make sure that if it's a situation in which you have any scheduling needs whatsoever, I can definitely tell you that doing a professional automated conversion is going to help that system move forward and make the big bosses happier.
Okay, so the question is, what formats can you convert from? So there are a lot of different formats that you might have in your company. Maybe one format, maybe in multiple different types of formats. So I would say in order of increasing difficulty, so moving from DocBook is an XML standard, and DocBook is already structured. So if you have DocBook content and you want to merge that or migrate that into DITA, generally that's a relatively relatively easy conversion. There's a lot that needs to be thought about, but it's definitely relatively easy. If you're already using structured FrameMaker, which is either an XML format or close to it, so that's also tends to be a little bit easier than starting from scratch with unstructured. But you still need to do, from DocBook or FrameMaker unstructured, you still need to do some kind of a migration from the structure over the tag set that you were using before into the new tag set with DITA, and as well as breaking that content into modules or components or topics, really, for DITA. I would say the majority of our customers are converting from unstructured FrameMaker into DITA. FrameMaker is unstructured, but it tends to be, folks are generally pretty good at making templates, and maybe there may be more than one template, but FrameMaker allows you to keep to the template a little bit easier than Word, which is the next step, or the next type of format. In the good old days, a few years ago, we used to do a lot of RTF conversions from WinHelp. I haven't seen that in a while. But converting from Word is definitely a possibility. Takes a little more effort. A lot of folks are converting from HTML web content, HTML help from Microsoft CHM files, or various type of web help formats, for example, RoboHelp, taking that content and migrating that into DITA. Some folks are also migrating from Adobe InDesign. If you say that DocBook and Structured FrameMaker are relatively structured, so Adobe InDesign is relatively unstructured. It's almost all formatting, has different text flows, it's a little bit more challenging, but definitely a possibility to convert from InDesign. We've done a bunch of projects like that. So if you have InDesign, it's definitely a possibility. PDF, believe it or not, it is possible to convert PDF, although it's really, really, really difficult. And I wouldn't suggest going down that route unless you have a lot of PDF content and it's relatively consistent. So the high-level process of doing conversion is as follows. The first thing to do is prepare. Okay, the preparation for the conversion means preparing your requirements based on your content audit and your information architecture. Your pre-conversion checklist, meaning preparing your content for conversion. The idea meaning that the content may need to have some work done before going into DITA. Post-conversion checklist, cleaning up that content after it comes to the conversion. Sometimes there are things that the conversion can't handle that you want to go ahead and finish up. And creating a representative sample of that's going to be converted first. And that's the first batch that's going to be used for the conversion, and it's going to be used for the configuration of the conversion tools. After you've done the preparation of getting your requirements in place and understanding what you should be doing before and after the conversion, so then the idea is to go and configure the conversion tools. Now we've been saying automated conversion, but the truth is it's really semi-automated, meaning there's no way you can get an completely automated conversion from your content or anyone's content into DITA. So we mentioned there's the pre-work that has to be done, the post-work that has to be done, and the configuration of the conversion tools is meant to get the best results as you can from automation. Now, a lot of things people might say, well, it's very difficult to get at automation, but really it's actually not so hard. And there are a lot of things that people think that should be easy, but it's not really so easy. So those are the kind of things that are worked into the requirements and then the pre and post checklist, things that need to get done. After you've gone and configure those conversion tools, you take that representative sample, which may be one manual or a set of manuals, and convert the first batch. You run through that pre-conversion checklist, analyze, and generate what's called a conversion topic list, which we'll talk about. You review that topic list, and then actually run the conversion. Once you get the XML, the content back, you do a review, tweak the tools, and reconvert. And once you've gone through this process once, generally you should be set to go to convert the additional content according to some kind of schedule, with maybe some tweaking in the middle, depending on what kind of content is coming. One of the things you have to be concerned with is that as much preparation as you do up front, invariably there's going to be some kind of a content, some document, or that somebody wrote that doesn't exactly go according to the template, or has some differences in there. So it's never push a button and everything converts. It's always convert the content using the conversion tools and always keeping an eye on it. and making sure everything looks okay, and making any tweaks here and there as the conversion goes and different content goes through that process.
So when you start the conversion process, the first thing you'll do is you'll choose some of the first sets of information that you want to have converted. And what we always recommend is that you compile the absolutely most representative sample you can that contains as many elements and as many different kinds of information in whichever ways you're using it. So if you're using bulleted lists, sometimes on a level 1, sometimes on a level 2, also in tables, also in steps, things like that, those are the kinds of things you want to make sure that you have, if possible, in your initial conversion content. What that does is it allows the developer to create the conversion tool with the most amount of content possible, and therefore it smooths out the rest of the ride of the rest of the conversions. You end up, what you want to do is involve the style sheet developer. Sometimes people work with one style sheet developer and a different conversion developer. And what happens is the style sheet developer says, hey, wait a minute, if you want this output to look in a certain way, what you really need is this element set up in this way with an output class or something like that. And so it's important that the style sheet developer and the conversion developer are really in touch, because that's going to also make the output much easier. Again, you also want to involve your CMS vendor, because there are certain things that are going to require metadata, conditionalization using different attributes and variables, etc. So really, ideally, all three are going to work together with the author or the person who's running the project from the company side. In terms of scheduling, you need to understand that just the process of going through your own content and then setting it up and getting it through the first round of conversion, it can take some time. It can take 1 or 2 months. And after that, the conversions generally go much easier, again, because you have as many of the elements and as many of the styles included in the original conversion tool as possible. And one of the things that's very important to remember is that you schedule the migrations as needed. What you're going to want to do is freeze certain content, give it a chance to be run through the conversion, and then make it so that you have time on the other side of it to do any fixes that you need to do post-conversion before your deadlines.
Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of the conversion requirements, and we'll take a number of slides. So one of the first things you want to think about with the requirements are which DTDs to reference. Are you referencing the OASIS DTDs? Are you referencing your specialized DTDs? Which encoding are you referencing in the XML files? Is it going to be UTF-8, which is probably the majority that we come across? What's the folder structure of the output? Do you want everything to be in one flat folder? Probably not. Do you want it to be in certain folders based on topic type, etc.? There's things you want to think about. The file naming convention. Often people want to take this opportunity to make sure that DITA content is named in a certain way, using, for example, using all lowercase file names, replacing spaces, any kind of spaces or quote-unquote illegal characters with underscores. And DITA is XML. XML is a little bit flaky, especially when you talk about CMSs, so no spaces allowed. They're really bad, those spaces. And non-alphanumeric numeric characters are also problematic. Also something I didn't put in here, but some CMSs and file systems are sensitive to the number of the size of the file path. So if you have a deep nested file structure and then the name of the topic, the file name is very, very long, so some CMSs have a problem and start choking on that. So you want to think about that and make sure that the file names that you pick for your topics may be representative of the name of the topic, the title, but not too long. Some folks like to add an indicator about the type of topic it is. For example, if it's a concept, the name of the file would be C underscore, reference would be R underscore, etc. Another question to think about is whether to use DITA, a .DITA extension, or .xml. Some tools, a lot of tools really doesn't matter. Some tools it does matter. We had one customer that had most of their content in DITA, but they found out that their search engine they were using wasn't working on .DITA files, only works on .xml files. So something you want to think about.
Another aspect to the conversion requirements would be mapping the elements to the DITA tagging. Basically, part of that, what that means is you have certain paragraph styles and certain character styles, and you need to map those to the tagging structures. So there are certain things that are also included in the mapping rules. For example, in DITA we have something called a short description, and that would be the first paragraph that's not a list item. So if you have your content set up that way, that's something that could be set up specifically to convert that way. You could convert things like context and prerequisite and step and info if you're not using something like that and you want to add it in. So ahead of time, what you would want to do is set up a paragraph style that would say, okay, this paragraph style, we can call it context, is going to transfer into a context element in DITA. One thing that's really important is that if you know how many tasks you're going to want, because DITA is very much based in chunks, you want to keep everything to one chunk per topic. And what that means is you may have a situation set up where you have in your current content, you may have something where you have a task and a subtask below that. And you want to set up rules for that. Some people are going to say, hey, we only want one task included per topic. And if you come across content that has multiple tasks, then wrap the second task in a separate kind of tag. And you can mark the tag as a required cleanup. And what we can do is set that up to flag it in a certain way so that when you're going through post-conversion, it makes it very easy for you to see what needs to be cleaned up. Another example is there might be a paragraph with example as the text. And the conversion tool can actually pick up the text and say, hey, I'm looking for any time there's a paragraph and it has the word example in it, then we're going to turn this into the example element. You can also do things like say, we want to make sure that there are no empty tags in the content when they go through. Graphics. So the XML is going to link to graphics, and you're going to want to make sure that you set up a specific naming convention for those as well. As Joe said, there are certain characters that are problematic. The length of names may be problematic. You may want to have a certain kind of description for those graphics. So the conversion requirements should also determine how you want those set up. The different graphic formats, so the basic ones, JPEG, GIFs, and PNGs, those are generally fine. They run through the conversion process without any issues. BMPs are generally converted to PNG files. EMF files are often converted to SVG files. If you have EPS files, so you want to make sure that when you realize that when you're moving to DITA, it's probably going to require some special processing in the style sheets. For example, if you're using EPS graphics in PDF output, so you're going to need to use Antenna House plus GhostScript, which are two different programs that work together to be able to process the EPS graphics. Additionally, if you're using HTML, so it may have to set it up to automatically convert those to PNG files. TIFF files are generally okay for PDF, but they're going to require some tweaking for HTML files formats because not all the browsers support TIFF viewing out of the box.
Some other types of graphics that need some special processing. So callouts, if you have, for example, FrameMaker or Word or InDesign, where you have a graphic and then you drew callouts, so those are not automatically, in most cases, converted into a graphic. So what a lot of folks will do is they'll convert those, or they'll create SVG files. SVG, just for those people who are not familiar with that, SVG is a graphic format that was actually XML underneath the hood. So what you can do is you can have an image inside the SVG, and then inside the SVG there's actually drawn vector callouts with text. Okay, now text can actually be changed. It can also be translated even. Okay, so a lot of folks are going through the process of converting by hand, manually those graphics or those callout into SVG files and then relinking them in. Some folks decide to dispense with the callouts. They'll create a graphic and then they'll use numbers, numbered list at the bottom with the captions. Hotspots also, if you're using hotspots, particularly in the HTML formats. So you have to worry about that, how you're going to be converting that, or whether you're going to dispense from them. Most people dispense with them and you get rid of them. Visio, some folks are linking Visio into their source documents. Visio is not a supported format in most DITA tools. So what you'll want to do is take your any kind of graphics that you have in Visio and convert them into either PNG or JPEG or any of the other formats that we spoke about before.
When you do the conversion, you end up with output that is generally a set of topics, and then the way the topics are linked are through maps versus book maps. So a map may be set up to have several topics within a chapter versus a book map that might be for an entire publication, whether it's for a PDF or for HTML output. It will include it could include several sets of maps within. And that's what organizes all of the content. The modularization is, so the way you want to set it up is based on your content. If you have your content set up in chapters and parts and appendices, the conversion can set up that modularization for you. Use of map refs versus topic refs, and you can set up the XML so that it links back to a map ref or a topic ref or a con ref to set these submaps up together and link them. The creation of container topics for chapters and parts. So again, you could have a part, and inside the part you're going to have several chapters, and that's all going to be set up through the conversion as well. Plus, we can set it up to put in the front matter, back matter. That would include all of your legal notices and could be a list of the note styles or things like that that all need to go in the front matter. Back matter can also include the general information that you have in the back with the contact information, all the different kinds of titles, title, subtitle, etc., plus the metadata in terms of publishing. And the way the conversion can pick it up is it can say, hey, we're going to take the metadata from here in this file, or we're going to take the metadata from at runtime through the CMS. The list of tables and figures, that can also be picked up through the conversion, but you want to be able to set up how it's going to actually pull. Is it going to pull every single table, and how will it be labeled? Figures, the same thing. Maybe you have certain ones that are marked as figures, and you have certain ones that are inserted without a figure title. Those are the things that need to be set up in the conversion tool as well. And again, additionally, the glossary and the index. And you have certain tags that you're going to put in to make sure that the glossary and index terms are pulled forth in the conversion, and then with the style sheet developer to set up how they're going to look in the output.
So a lot of folks are, especially if they're using FrameMaker or RoboHelp, they might be using conditions, conditional tags. So those, what you'll want to convert those also into DITA attributes. And basically with DITA you have attributes, and each attribute can have a value. So we have, for example, audience attribute, platform attribute, etc. And so what you want to do is take map those conditional tags that you're using now and map them into an attribute name pair, attribute value pair. You can also take this if you notice on this screenshot here, Unix and Unix are the same word, but they're spelled differently. In FrameMaker or RoboHelp, those are two separate tags, and you can take this opportunity to kind of clean things up in the DITA content and map those to be the same value. There's also some conditionalization that you would want to discontinue, so you can decide which conditional tags that you want to just eliminate and not convert. Variables are also something that's a structure that's used often in FrameMaker and some other types of outputs. Other types of formats. So you can have variables automatically generated to conrefs. As Yehudit mentioned before, certain CMSs deal with conrefs or with variables differently. So for example, in SDL Live Content, they have special tagging for variables, something called varref. So instead of conrefs, you might use this varref attribute, and that's something you want to be aware of. and make sure you deal with that in the conversion spec. Index entries, whether you want to leave those index entries inline or you want to move them automatically into your prologue. A lot of folks choose to move them. Context sensitivity, if you have context sensitive markers inside your FrameMaker or Word or RoboHelp or wherever, so you can retain those markers and convert them into the elements that are needed in DITA in order to produce that context sensitive help. So generally folks either use a data element or a resource ID element. You want to make a choice about that and do the conversion accordingly. On cross-references, often folks take the opportunity to reduce their reliance or use of cross-references and move to a structure where they're using more using relationship links or relationship tables. So what you can do is we have a lot of folks who decide to copy to basically build up the relationship tables automatically, and then over time remove the xrefs from the text, basically by rewriting wherever needed the sentences and get rid of them, and you already have the relationship tables in place. Some folks say no, only links that are in the bottom of the topic, take those and automatically make those in relationship tables. But the idea is that you can use the opportunity to automatically build relationship tables and start moving away from xrefs. This is another example of something that can be done automatically, but doing it by hand it can be fairly tedious. So what I'm going to do now is show an example of a spec or conversion requirements. So we should be seeing here is an Excel file, which is a template that we generally use for the conversions that we do. So you see here is an example of pre-conversion checklist. Okay, it basically runs through different types of character tagging that you want to go ahead and make sure to set up as character tags or character formats styles if you don't have them already. Here's an example of a mapping of different styles into DITA elements. So some of them are fairly straightforward. So for example, if you have a format or a style called para, that would go to paragraph. Para to indent, right? These are different types of styles that you might have in your template, but they all go to paragraph. Same with headings. Different headings levels are going to go to the same type of element in DITA. Later on, it gets a little bit more tricky. For example, you might decide to make certain tables into definition lists. You want to make sure, for example, if you're using notes in different places, either in tables or other places, to determine which element you're using, note element, maybe note with a paragraph inside. Okay. I'm going to go down a little bit. Different types of notes, right? If you have different types of notes, cautions, and warnings that are styled in your source content, so you'll want to make sure to notice or to put the right type element, type attribute inside the note. So as we know, a note in DITA there's only one note element, and then you have to set the type, unless you have some kind of a specialization going. Okay, similarly with different types of tasks or different types of lists, ordered or unordered lists, you can convert them into different structures for steps, sub-steps, etc. What you should be seeing here is a list of other types of requirements, some of them which we mentioned. I'll just kind of go through these briefly. For example, the requirement of what the doc type should be looking like inside the DITA content. The file naming convention we spoke about before is laid out. The graphic requirements, exactly how you want graphics to be laid out, how to convert them. For the book map, for example, if you're using book maps, what you want the book map to look like as a starting point. Right? If you already want to include certain book front matter, back matter, etc., what you want the structures to look like. Titles, where you want the titles to go. There's different types of titles in books and book maps. How you want the chapters to be represented, how the glossaries are going to be built up. Just going to scroll down here. A lot of these things we mentioned. Here are some other examples of more detailed specifications about how how some of the tagging should be done. If you're using admonitions, how the note should be done, what should happen with those icons and the graphics. Whether if you're using icons, whether it should be omitted automatically, etc. Okay. And what you should be seeing here is something we saw before, is the conditionalization. Now you can go and map the conditional tag usage into conditional attributes in DITA, and then determine which of your tags you want to discontinue use. So back to the slides.
So we generally recommend that you have a pre-conversion checklist and a post-conversion checklist. On the pre-conversion checklist is preparing the content for conversion. Because some things are really going to be best done before the conversion, while other things can be done after it's run through the tool. One of the big ones is to check the style usage. For an example, if you have a heading styled as body, you don't want it to convert as a title, or it should trigger separation into a separate topic. If you have a heading set as a heading, so it's going to convert as a heading. Those things are very important to make sure, if possible, the cleaner the content, the cleaner the conversion will be. Applying character styles to get the semantic domain tagging. For example, if you have a UI control, would be the buttons that you would press on a GUI that you have set up. So you might have user name or something like that, and click this button, and those are things that you're going to want to set up some character styles for, so that the conversion can pick up the tagging properly. File names and file paths, those are big ones. When you say you have to go to this file to pick something up, so you set a character style, and then from that point forward, that character style is always going to be picked up in a certain tag, and the style sheet developer can set up that tag to output in the character style that you wanted for it. One example rule that you might have is that all bold text, no matter where you see it, should become a UI control. And again, that's something that you're going to want to work out with your own content. You may use bold in other places, and you may want it to set up somewhere else, in which case you're going to have to decide whether you want it to run through as one style, or whether you want to set up two different styles in your content pre-conversion so that it does come out as two different tags on the other side. Another one is one we mentioned a little while ago, to verify that there's only one set of steps in each task, including so that you don't necessarily have a task with one set of steps and then another set of steps. Removing the stem sentences that precede the steps. For example, depending on how much into the very clear, clean-cut DITA standard you're using, you may want to take out those to-do statements that you're used to having, because it may come through as an element where you end up with part of it in the context and part of it in the task and part of it in the instructions, and it's going to look weird, and it's not going to be the content that you want. So you may want to clean up some of that content before you run it through the conversion. You may also have a task that has an ordered list that is not part of the steps. It includes saying, okay, you need to have all 5 of these things, and it's not actually a set of steps. So it's a good idea to assign it a different style than the one you're using for steps, so that when it comes through the conversion, it's going to come through in the appropriate tagging for DITA. Another one of our reality checks. Something to keep in mind is that no matter what you do, the content is going to need some work. You may have the cleanest content in the world, and that will be fantastic, and that's going to make your life a million times easier. But chances are you're going to have at least one style here or there, and it's going to need some work, and that's okay, because it's part of the process. The more time you spend preparing for the conversion, the better the process will be overall, and it'll